Hello and welcome to my channel, iWinDeluxe Gaming. W-engines, or wengens for short, are fun ball-shaped objects that somehow improve an agent's damage in Zenless Zone Zero. In version 2.0, we all got a standard S-rank wengen selector, and if you're wondering which one to choose, or, well, I guess since this video came out after version 2.0 was released and many of you have already likely chosen your wengen, you might be wondering if you made a mistake choosing the wengen that you chose. Well, then this is the perfect video for you. Tired of sacrificing your Jane Doe Dakimakura funds for in-game premium currencies? Well, waste no more with today's sponsor, LD Shop. Developed by LD Player Emulator Group, LD Shop gives you actually surprising amounts of savings for your in-game purchases in so many top gacha games like Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, Wuthering Waves, and so many more. Zenless Zone Zero top-ups start from 22% off, and I was skeptical at first, but I spent about 2 minutes signing up and creating a one-time use virtual credit card to purchase $100 of monochrome in Zenless Zone Zero. All you need is your in-game ID, so no need to punch in any sensitive account-related data. Not only did I purchase the $100 package for just $69 dollars, which is over 30% saved, it was delivered nearly instantly. And with that nearly $31 saved, that's the perfect amount for my Jane Doe Dakimakura. So now you can get your monochromes and your waifu in real lifeu in the same priceu. Use my link down below to get a 15% off coupon and 5% off coupon to save up to $50. And yes, Zenless Zone Zero's double top-up bonus will work through LD Shop. LD Shop also has a VIP system where when you spend over $80, you get VIP membership, which can reward you with a free Internet membership. So what are you waiting for? Don't keep Jane waiting and smash that link down below to save big money on LD Shop. Huge thanks to LD Shop for sponsoring today's video. First, I've got a couple general tips before you select your wengen. It appears that the wengen selector ticket will be available for T-minus 39 days or so as of recording this voiceover. This means that you have plenty of time to lose 75-25s on the wengen banner and 50-50s on the standard banner to decide what wengen you should select for your account. Now, if you do end up waiting, I highly recommend setting an alarm or calendar reminder for a couple of days before the ticket expires so you don't forget to claim it. That would be around July 12th, which is a Saturday, giving you all weekend to mull over one of the most important decisions in your life, more important than even choosing between marrying the love of your life or which bangbu you should pull for. And the next tip I have is to consider waiting a bit before refining your wengen. For those of you that do indeed get dupes of whatever wengen that you get. Personally, I don't ever plan on using these across multiple different teams, but many people have expressed distress refining their standard S-rank wengens, especially the Brimstone. So for certain gameplay modes like Shiyu or Deadly Assault, you might have an issue with not having enough Brimstones to go around. For me personally, this isn't an issue, and for those of you that it's not an issue for, it is totally fine to refine these wengens if you get multiple copies, but for some of us, this is something to keep in mind. So how useful a wengen is for your account depends on a few variables. One of which is what are the alternatives and how accessible are they? 2, how much better or worse are these wengens compared to their peers? And 3, how cool is their cosmetic effect on each respective character? Starting off with the stun class, we actually have 2 stun class wengens in the selector ticket, the Restrained, which is Lycon's signature wengen, and the Hellfire Gears, Koleda's signature wengen. The Hellfire Gears provides 0.6 energy generation per second, while its equipper is off-field. And no, this is not multiplied by energy regen. Also, you need to perform 2 EX specials in quick succession in order to fully benefit from this wengen's buff, which is why on this chart, it's rarely the best option for day's output, and even if it is, it's not like a whole lot better than its peers. The next point is a bit of a double-edged sword wengen, and it's the new drive set that pretty much every stunner and their mother will be using now, the King of the Summit. The King of the Summit appreciates the energy regen from the Hellfire Gears, but the Hellfire Gears wants to actually spend the energy near the beginning of the rotation in order to get the maximum benefits from its passive. Meanwhile, the King of the Summit wants you to actually stun the enemy with the EX specials themselves to maximize the buff that it provides to the DPS character coming on field. As such, this wengen falls behind the Steam Oven overall in my opinion. especially with this new drive set. The steam oven also provides the same amount of energy regen and comparable amounts of days output on average. Not only that, but the steam oven rewards you for hoarding energy and then dumping it near the end of the stun agent's rotation. What I'm trying to say here is that unfortunately, the Hellfire Gears is overall not that great in my opinion, especially when we have nearly as good Wenjins in the steam oven and the fossilized core to choose from. And both of those are very free-to-play friendly Wenjins, being craftable or I guess purchasable in the gadget shop. Now with that being said, of course the Hellfire Gears is still a good Wenjin and it's not far behind most of the other stun Wenjins when it comes to days output. So yeah, it's a perfectly fine alternative compared to the craftable steam oven and the craftable fossilized core. Alright, one more issue with the steam oven is that all the featured S-rank stun Wenjins provide some sort of buff, like how Trigger's Wenjin provides 25% defense reduction, Qingyi's Wenjin providing bonus damage, etc., thus making this Wenjin also lack the utility as well. The next stun class S-rank Wenjin on the selector ticket is the Restrained. The Restrained has many issues, with one of those issues being that it mainly improves days on basic attacks. Now it does boost basic attack damage as well, but this basic attack damage boost is generally not worth considering, as you'll barely notice an improvement to your deadly assault scores thanks to the additional damage this thing might help you do. The Restrained is a usable option on Lycan, Lighter, Qingyi, and Ambi, but considering its days output is about the same as the craftable free-to-plays and the damage increase is basically negligible in a full team scenario, I recommend this one even less than the Hellfire Gears. As we can see, in this stun class Wenjin chart, the days outputs are far too similar between the Hellfire Gears, the Restrained, the steam oven, and the fossilized core, thus making these two stun class selectable Wenjins difficult to recommend. But I know some of you Lycan mains are a little freaky and will pick it for him just because now he'll look a little shinier. Up next we have the attack class Wenjins, starting with the hottest Wenjin on this selector ticket, the Brimstone. The Brimstone provides a lot of attack for your agent, having 30% attack as a secondary stat and providing 3.5% attack upon hitting an enemy with a basic, dash, or dodge counter, stacking up to 8 times. The Brimstone is a great general attack class Wenjin and is good for any attacker that likes to spam basic attacks in their playstyle. For the agents that it works well on, it's usually only around 10% worse for most of them than their signature Wenjins, with most free-to-play Wenjin options being another 7 to 10% worse than the Brimstone. Now I did want to talk about some specific agents, and yes, I know Yishuan is not an attack agent, but I didn't want to make a separate rupture chart just for her, so for now she is an honorary attack agent. Anyway, characters that make great use of normal attacks like Harumasa, Nekomata, Soldier 11, Zhu Yuan, and Anton all perform very well with the Brimstone. Starting with Zhu Yuan actually, where the Brimstone is nearly as good as their signature Wenjin in many scenarios, the Riot Suppressor. Although Pridewind's calcs likely assume the lack of Astro Yao here, whose 1200 attack buff does dilute the Brimstone's buff. But still, this is a great option for her since she obviously enjoys spamming basic attacks. Ellen version 2.0 is also a very solid user of the Brimstone because of the basic attacks she integrates throughout her rotation. In Upgrade 1, or I guess Refinement 1, Brimstone is at 91.7% of her signature Shark Wenjin, and in Upgrade 5 Brimstone is actually at 102% of her signature Wenjin, demonstrating that indeed upgrades on the Brimstone can and should be considered for these characters that can utilize it well. Needless to say, Mr. Dash Attack Spammer Harumasa puts the Brimstone to work at around 91.1% of his signature herb case, and Nekomata can also utilize it thanks to her having nothing better to do during a stun window other than spam her basic attacks. But her signature Wenjin, the Steel Cushion, is still going to be more recommended for Nekomata. Now Soldier 11, despite Evelyn's signature Wenjin being a bit better on her, also works well with the Brimstone. And as mentioned earlier, after a few refinements, the Brimstone's gaps between these characters' signatures and a refined Brimstone will be even smaller. So if these characters are ones that you plan to stick with and also want to save Primo Gems on by not pulling their signature weapons, well, the Brimstone is a fantastic choice and you can even consider refinements on it. Next we have the Steel Cushion, which I actually think is a bit underrated, but honestly for a good reason. The Steel Cushion provides 24% crit rate as its secondary stat, and its passive provides 20% physical damage and 25% bonus damage when attacking an enemy from behind. The Steel Cushion suffers from consistency issues, requiring you to attack an enemy from behind for the full benefits. Simply setting up this condition leads to a damage loss, as you need to reposition yourself with most characters to fulfill this. However, some characters do have tools that automatically attempt to move them behind the enemy, although even this is actually enemy dependent, and generally ineffective against large enemies like the Unknown Corruption Complex. Still, against most enemies, some agents do have the right tool to penetrate the enemy's defenses from behind, like Nekomata, whose part of her basics and hold basic put her behind the enemy. And Nekomata being a standard character, you are probably likely to get her Mindscape 1 eventually, which makes all of her attacks count as doing it from behind. Unfortunately though, despite this being great on all three physical attackers, Nekomata, Corrin, and Billy, physical is just in an awkward spot lately since none of the Deadly Assault bosses are weak to physical damage. Oh right, and for Billy specifically, overall his Starlight Engine replica is about as good as this Wenjin is, so yeah, maybe don't pull it just for him. Another character that can utilize this is Ellen, as her basic attack 3 often tries to move her behind her enemies. Although one drawback is that on her next basic attack 3 she'll move in front of the enemy, but I'm Rivenous' Calx actually has the Steel Cushion at around 87% of her signature Wenjin, which is pretty solid. Also check out his full guide on Ellen version 2.0 if you want more deets. Anyway, another character is Hugo. This chart has Pridewind's Calx, which actually didn't even bother with the Steel Cushion, and I don't blame them. But Hugo is often able to get his totalizes against an enemy from behind, since his EX special, if I remember correctly, since I actually skipped him on my main account, but his EX special moves him behind the enemy. Assuming you successfully do this around 75% of the time, the Steel Cushion does become his best free-to-play friendly option, although the performance gain it has over the craftable Street Superstar is pretty small, thus making it really kind of difficult to strongly recommend it for him. But yeah, against most enemies where you can move behind them, it is a pretty decent free-to-play friendly option for Hugo. Finally, the Steel Cushion is actually a competitive free-to-play friendly option for Yishuan, because, well, frankly, Rupture just doesn't have many options right now and Yishuan scales best off of crit. Keep in mind that the passive doesn't work for her, but the crit rate alone makes it competitive to her free-to-play friendly option, the Puzzle Sphere. So yeah, the Steel Cushion is an awkward, but actually decent choice if you know what you're doing with it. To summarize, if you really like it from behind, then the Steel Cushion is for you. Up next we have the Fusion Compiler. The Fusion Compiler provides 21.1% pen ratio as its secondary stat, and its passive increases attack by 12%. Then, part of its passive, for every special or EX special you use, you get 25 Anomaly Mastery for 8 seconds, with each stack being counted independent of each other. Needless to say, being Grace's signature Wenjin, this is a good and consistent option for Grace, although apparently according to Pridewin, an upgrade 5 Electro Lip Gloss is better. Anyway, I actually have multiple issues with the Fusion Compiler. For one, most agents don't typically spam their specials or EX specials, which you need to do to maintain the Anomaly Proficiency buff. The agents that are able to spam their specials and EX specials include Grace, Yanagi, Piper, and to a lesser extent Bernice, who are the best wielders of this thing overall. However, the even bigger issue with it is that in content like Deadly Assault, where for anomaly teams it usually takes a while to stun the enemy, the Weeping Gemini is generally competitive or even better than the Fusion Compiler, and the Weeping Gemini is craftable, so yeah. And for other content like Shiyu Defense, the Rainforest Gourmet is also quite close. Because these craftable Wenjins perform competitively to the Fusion Compiler, and because most agents, anomaly agents, don't actually spam their specials, the Fusion Compiler sits in an awkward place. Still, if you need an anomaly Wenjin, this is indeed an option. And actually, it's sadly one of Miyabi's better free-to-play friendly options, just because of the mega attack that it provides. But most Miyabi players do have her signature Wenjin, the Hailstorm Shrine. Another thing to note about the Fusion Compiler is that since its secondary stat is pen ratio, it pairs better with pen ratio providers like Rina, and it actually pairs worse with defense shredders like Nicole and Trigger's signature Wenjin. So that's another minor point for you to keep in mind. And lastly, we have Rina's signature Wenjin, the Weeping Cradle. This thing provides a 24% pen ratio as a secondary stat. Its ability provides 0.6 energy regen per second. Look, I'm not gonna lie, this thing's buff window is very small. We're talking just a microscopic seconds worth of buff here. In its best case scenario, it provides 20.7% bonus damage to your team. Unfortunately, it is also very difficult to test properly in my opinion, because there is no buff or debuff indicator. It's got the good old trust me bro buff to your team's damage. Anyway, in theory, this should work well with characters that can provide some sort of lingering hits while they're off field. And as such, this is highly dependent on what character you plan to use this on and with whom. Needless to say, for Rena, this is a great option for her, and it's generally her best in slot option since Rena's pen ratio buff is also improved by the pen ratio on this Wenjin. So yeah, go for this for Rena. Besides Rena though, this is where things get tricky. On Astra Yao, both the Bashful Demon and the Kaboom the Cannon give this thing a run for its money. Given how common the Bashful Demon and Kaboom the Cannon are, it's hard to recommend this thing over those, but they are gacha exclusive Wenjins and not everyone will have them. Also, the Vault is a similarly short-lasting option that performs very similarly to the Weeping Cradle on Astra Yao. Finally, the Unfettered Game Ball is also really good for Astra Yao to buff Yishuan's damage against ether weak enemies. As for Lucy, I gotta keep it a buck, I don't think it actually works with Lucy's boars while she's off field through my limited testing, and as such I can't recommend it for her. But I might be wrong with that, and if it does work for her boars while she's off field, then I guess it's fine. Although still, the Kaboom the Cannon should still be the better option since that one definitely works with the boars. For Sokaku, overall I do recommend Sokaku's signature Wenjin on Sokaku more, and for Nicole, the Vault is perfectly competitive with the Weeping Cradle as well. Frankly, the Weeping Cradle is largely a Wenjin that I'd only recommend for Rena, or if you've gotten so unlucky with your A-rank Wenjin pulls that you haven't gotten the Kaboom the Cannon or the Bashful Demon or even the Vault for Nicole or Astra, then yeah, I guess the Weeping Cradle is an okay choice. So yeah, that about does it for this video. To summarize, overall the Brimstone is your best option, and if you invest into it in the long term, frankly, refinements are actually fine on it too. With refinements, it becomes pretty close for many DPS characters in performance to their signature Wenjins, and as such it is overall my most recommended Wenjin, depending on who your DPS character is. Next we have the Steel Cushion, which is good on physical agents who are all unfortunately not in the best spot right now. Still, it is also Nekomata's best in slot option, and it's good for Billy and Korn. It's also decent for Hugo, and it is marginally better than Yishuan's free-to-play friendly options as well if that's something that you need. After that, personally I think the pickings are getting slim. But for Rena specifically, I do recommend the Weeping Cradle. But for the other supports, the A-rank gacha support Wenjins tend to be better and or competitive on the rest of the support agents. Then we have the Fusion Compiler, which is great for Grace and Piper, mediocre on Yanagi, and a copium option for Miyabi, and frankly just a side grade / worse than the Weeping Gemini for more difficult content for the rest of the Anomaly agents. After that, we have the Stun Wenjins, the Hellfire Gears, and the Restrained, which I'ma keep it a buck, the Rainforest Gourmet and Fossilized Core work just fine. Let me know if you found this video helpful and what you plan to do with your Wenjin selector. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Went to Lose, signing out.